Welcome to some more stories, tales of transformation inspired by being outdoors. My name is Marianne Rowe. I'm a founding teacher of Monterey Bay Meditation Studio and a psychotherapist in private practice in Pacific Grove, California, on the ceded ancestral lands of the Ohlone Rumsen people. Over the past few years, I've been blessed with meeting a number of extraordinary people who have extraordinary relationships with the outdoors. Whether working as a scientist, an educator, a researcher, an astronomer, an attorney, or an environmental activist, each of these individuals engage their heart and spirit as well as their mind in their work. Each brings a sense of reverence, compassion, service, and reciprocity, as well as a profound understanding of interbeing into their relationship with the outdoors. Each has a story of being transformed by their relationship with the outdoors and has graciously agreed to share this story with us. Sitting by the campfire with me today is Lisa Emanuelson. As a marine biologist and passionate science communicator, Lisa has spent her career sharing her love of the ocean and all sea life with students and adults. She spends a great deal of time in and around the sea and is dedicated to inspiring people to protect the ocean in our natural world. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
Mm. Thank you for joining us to share how your perspective and even your life has been transformed through your relationship with the outdoors. Mm. With respect to the original indigenous inhabitants and stewards of this land that we live on, we begin our conversation with a land acknowledgement. Whose traditional lands are you on, Lisa?
Well, like you, Marianne, I am on the ceded and ancestral lands of the Ohlone Rumsen.
Ah, yes. So, Lisa, you care deeply about the ocean and how it is impacted by human beings' relationship with all waters, not just the ocean, but the rivers and the creeks and the streams that flow into it. And by connecting the dots of interbeing, that everything matters to everything, you help people realize how even small actions make a difference in an ecosystem thriving or diminishing. And your love of the earth and all her beings is palpable. So I'm curious about the beginning of this profound relationship. What were you very curious about as a child?
It's really interesting because I've been thinking a lot about, in preparation for our talking, I've been thinking about my connections and sort of where those connections started. And
Mm,
um, it's funny because I didn't grow up in a house where we did a lot of stuff outside or go
mhm,
camping or anything like that. And so
mhm.
we'd play in the yard. We'd had a park close to us, a really large park, but sometimes I would escape and go find frogs in local creeks. I grew up in the Bay Area, so there's a lot of channeled creeks, and so there would be places where there was so many frogs. I can't even believe it. So yeah, I think that's how that started, it may be because kids, I feel like kids are so drawn to nature because
Mhm,
they're connected to nature a little bit more intimately,
mhm.
and then we sort of lose that as we get older, and then maybe we find that again at some point. But yeah, when I was a kid, that I think that's how those connections started, and they weren't things that were really cultivated or curated by my parents at all. They were things that were
Mhm.
really us as neighborhood kids roaming around, getting into trouble, um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
looking for frogs or whatever. So yeah, it's
Oh,
sort of a
yes, yes.
funny beginnings, you know.
Mhm. Following your curiosity and seeing what you could discover. Yeah.
Yeah, and the kids in the neighborhood that I grew up in, we would we would go, so they heard that somebody found a ton of frogs, or they heard such and such was such, in this one spot, or and so we would all get on
Mhm.
our bikes and go there, and go do that and go see what was there. And I think that,
Yeah.
in a way, that sort of started my adventurous spirit, because I didn't always go with the kids in the neighborhood. Sometimes I just go to those places by myself. Like, I had been there with the
Yeah.
kids in the neighborhood and then later went back on my own when
Ah,
when I could have a little quiet time,
yeah.
and look at all the
Yes.
frogs, instead of putting them in
Yes.
paper cups and dumping them out in different creeks. I don't know. I don't know what we did. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there was something that you were allured to that took you back there by yourself, that
Oh,
there was
definitely.
some calling.
Oh, definitely. And I think, you know, being in a space where you feel safe enough to do that is definitely an
Yeah,
important
yeah,
part
yeah.
of feeling like you can do those sorts of things. I mean, where I grew up, I grew up in a really unique neighborhood, because on my block next door to me was a children's library, a library just
Mhm.
for children's books.
Ah.
I know, it was awesome. I spent a lot of time there. And then next to
Mhm.
that was this big theater complex. And then next to
Mm,
that was this huge, huge, huge park, which had,
yeah.
the Girl Scouts, and it had a place called the Junior Museum, which I also
Mhm.
spent a lot of time in. And my school was
Mm,
there, and the pool, and there
mhm,
was, we didn't have to cross any big streets to go someplace where
mhm,
there was tons of stuff to explore. And so I
mhm.
think, I mean, I realize, obviously, that's a really unique situation.
Yeah.
Um, and certainly when I grew up in the 70s, I mean, there was like, you know, come home when you hear your dad whistle. And that
Right.
was, I mean, that was pretty
Exactly.
common. I don't know
Yes.
anybody that does that now with their
Right.
kids. But
Right.
that was it was a unique time, and it was a unique space, and that, I
Mm.
think, really contributed to sort of that exploration.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. I love that reference to your spirit of adventure and to explore and discover even by
Yeah.
your yeah.
Well, there used to be, so right next to the pool where we would go swimming, that was in part of this huge park, there was a like a little tiny redwood tree forest. And so you could go in there and
Oh.
find owl pellets in the forest floor.
Oh.
I mean, it was really cool. I mean,
Oh.
it was such a huge area. And then, of course, there was the Junior Museum, and then there were the frogs in the
Mhm.
creeks, which were a little bit farther. But, I mean, there's just a
Ah.
really, it was just such a different, and when I go back to that same neighborhood now, I mean, obviously it has a lot of great memories for me, but it's funny how small it is. It really
Yes.
isn't that big,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean, it's big, but it's not
Mhm.
as big as I remember. I mean, your
Mhm.
reference point is so
Mhm.
much different, but yeah, such a great time.
What
Such
a
a great time.
blessing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So with that as sort of the seed bed of that exploring and discovering, I'm curious if there was a transformative experience or an additional set of circumstances that catalyzed your decision to become a marine
Mm.
biologist.
Well, I was going to a community college.
Mm-hmm.
Because right after high school, I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't have money to go. And so I didn't want to just stay at a 4-year school without really knowing what I wanted to do, because I had to pay for it myself. So I went to a community college, and I just thought I would go into business. I mean, seemed like a good idea. I was in the accounting class, and it was okay. It was fine.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take a general ed of a science class, and I took marine mammals of California with this amazing instructor, Glenn Moffat. Awesome,
Mm-hmm.
awesome guy.
Mhm.
he would say, well, why don't you stop by my office hours and let's talk about blah, 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 blah. I would spend hours just talking about him, or not talking about it, but talking to him. I would just spend
Mhm.
hours and hours and hours in
Uh-huh.
his office. He would talk to me about, you know, this thing that he had on his wall was from some crazy animal or, whatever. And then
Mhm.
he said to me one time, it was so funny. I think back about it now. It's like, how would I have the guts to say that to somebody? I don't know. But he said to me, I want the next time you go to your accounting class, Lisa, he's like, look around and look at the other students in that class. And you think to yourself, you're going to spend the rest of your life with those people. Is that really who you want to spend the rest of your life with? Or do you want to spend your life with the people that are in your California Marine Mammals class? And I was like, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, you know.
Oh, that's
It
funny.
was such a funny, but he saw something. He saw something in me. Was like, I
Yeah.
didn't know what I wanted to do. He instantly saw that. But what was also funny is because I was a I was a business and an art major,
Mhm.
and I went to my art teacher, Gordon Holler. Still remember all these people's names.
Uh-huh.
I went to, of course, I don't remember a single business class teacher's name. No, not at all. But anyways,
Oh.
I went to Gordon and I said, so, I'm kind of like torn between whether I should do art or whether I should do science. And he's like, Lisa, art is really more about marketing and it's more about business. And so if
Wow.
you're not going to do that, if that's not where your passion lies, then
Mhm.
you should do you should do
What
science.
great guidance.
No, it was
Wow.
awesome. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, and Gordon had been in, when he was in college, he had been a science guy and had
Mhm.
toyed with the whole thing between whether he should go into science or go into art. For him, it was such a calling to go into art
Mm.
that it was no choice.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
but for him to say, listen, it's all about marketing, I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not for
Oh.
me.
I just
And
decided I didn't wanna do that.
and so that actually, and so then from that day forward it was like, all right, it's all science. And then I really, because in
Mm.
high school I hated science. I mean, it was okay, I had okay science. I hated the biology in high school
Mhm.
because it was
Mhm.
just terribly taught, and I loved the
Mhm.
chemistry and I loved the physics.
Mhm.
but um but when I got into college, then the chemistry and the physics, I mean, they were great, and I did well. But for me, the real passion is sort of that exploration into what's
Mhm.
out there. Let's
Mhm.
see what's out there. But it was
Mhm.
very funny. I think about Glenn Moffat and Gordon Holler, and I think, thank God they send
Yes.
me in the right direction,
Yes.
because if I was an accountant, I would be really miserable.
Mhm.
I'd be a
Yeah.
volunteer for me, saying, yeah, I was in college and I decided to go into accounting and I really should have been a science major. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how when we pay attention, we can feel that calling. We can feel the difference
Yeah.
in our energy of when we are in alignment with what we're supposed to be doing or where our gift to the world
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
We energize, we light up. I mean, you light up when you talk about this, and I'm imagining that marine biology teacher saw that
Oh no,
light.
he saw that. I think he
And
saw that, and he was like, all right, well, how am I going to get this lady away from these like accountant people? These are going to be terrible. These are going to be terrible if she decides to do that.
That's
So
right.
yeah.
That's right.
So no, he
Yeah.
was good. He was really good. And it's funny because so on one of my first days, so I ended up going to UC Santa Cruz. And it's very funny because when I applied to go to a 4-year school, I only applied to UC Santa Cruz. Like, I didn't have a backup plan. It's like, if that wasn't going to be the thing, then that was not, then I didn't know what I was going to do. So, so on one of my first days in Santa Cruz on campus, going to classes, they're coming the other direction on a road, in because campus is full of trees and stuff like that. I met somebody else that I had just sort of seen in Glenn Moffat's classes, but we didn't really, because as a commuter college, as a junior college,
Mhm.
you don't really get to know people that well. He and I have been friends ever since. but
Wow.
it was the same, it was a similar thing with him where Glenn Moffat really sparked an interest in him. He eventually became a doctor and is now works
Mhm,
at the Mayo Clinic and all this stuff. But
mhm.
but for both of us, we both had this. Glenn Moffat was so part of that spark
Yeah.
in us. So it was
Wow.
good. It was really good.
Oh,
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Wow. Hmm. So you came in through the science store,
Hmm.
and you obviously have a profound love for, I mean, so there's heart. It's not all
Hmm.
the thinking mind,
Hmm.
but there's heart in your work and the what you bring to your teaching of
Hmm.
inspiring other people. So I'm curious about how would you describe your relationship with the outdoors? And you can make that as the outdoors, or you can make it specific to the ocean, since that's your area of
Hmm.
expertise. How would you describe that relationship?
Gosh, how do you describe it? I think, I mean, it's nurturing on both sides.
Yeah.
The outdoor world nurtures us, and we in sort of reflection need to nurture that. I think
Mhm,
that idea of stewardship has
mhm.
always been important to me. Um, the curiosity that I have about the
Yes.
ocean, what's there, why is it there, what does it look
Mhm.
like, how does it get by,
Mhm.
what's going on with all that. I don't know. I
Mhm.
guess that's sort of my relationship. I mean, I think of it as very, there's such a reciprocity, right? I guess in that sort of
Yeah.
sense, there's that reciprocity of, we
Mhm.
care for it, it cares for us. That whole
Mhm.
idea of we are not separate from nature. Nature is part of
Mhm.
us. I mean, and like I mentioned earlier, when we're kids, you're more connected to nature than you are to sort of
Mhm.
this world that we live in, where we're in houses and living sort of a
Mhm.
civilized existence. But the reality is that there's always that nature part of us. And I think for some people, and maybe, and because I work with so many volunteers and so many people that said, oh yeah, I wanted to do marine biology when I was in college, and I just decided to become an accountant. And you see that, like, that sadness that people have over that,
Yeah.
and it's like they're recognizing that there's that core part of them that they have decided to put aside.
Yeah.
And I think I haven't decided to put that aside, although you know um Dave and I have this my husband Dave and I have this calendar of questions. So
Mm.
it's a
Mm.
really interesting calendar. Instead of, quotes of the day, there's a question of the day. And today's question was, would you rather make a ton of money but do something mundane, or not make as much and do something that you love? And I've definitely
Yeah.
chosen the thing that I love to make less money at.
Mhm.
But seems like it's been okay. I mean, I've
Yeah.
enjoyed it. And I think that's sort of that, what are we here for kind of thing.
Yes.
Are we here
Yes.
for making a ton of money, or are we here for another purpose? So maybe
Right.
that's all part of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, well, that thing of, what we here for, I mean, it's that's the question, isn't it? And we can feel,
Hmm.
with, again, going back to that energy, or what lights you up, or what is your spark.
Hmm.
And that's related to what's important to you.
Hmm.
So, that what you value.
Hmm.
And so this is continuing, going even deeper into the relationship piece about, how are your values shaped by your relationship with
Mm.
the and with the outdoors. 'Cause I think one fed the other, and there's reciprocity in that
Hmm.
as well. So
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, indigenous teachers always, there's a lot of indigenous teachers that talk about, the seven generations, looking forward to seven generations. And I think,
mhm.
yeah, I mean, my lifetime, my little brief lifetime here can't be the it of existence. There has been
Yes.
people for thousands of years before us, but even before people showed up, there were
Mhm.
animals here for millions of years before us. So, you know, my little existence can't be the end of it all.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't be. And it shouldn't be
Mhm.
the end of it all. I mean, I've thought for a long time if the planet didn't have humans, maybe it would be a little bit better off. But um but yeah, so what can we do as a species that's a very well organized species who's
Mhm.
really controlled the planet in such a dramatic way? How can we make it so that, you know, the other species that are here actually have a right to exist as well, and
Indeed.
provide for themselves in the same way? I mean, I I, I get into I in the past I've gotten into discussions and I thought a lot about, well, what is my role here?
Mhm.
And you know again, I really think that, we're
Mhm.
stewards because we are so well organized and we are
Mhm.
having these big impacts,
Mhm.
and you know this can't be it. So,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
whether this will be it or not be it, I don't know, but I want to make sure that my impact isn't so great that, you know so I guess when I think about the values, I feel like we're all together, all the
Mhm.
species, not just
Mhm.
us as humans that can
Mhm.
communicate and organize ourselves really well, but that we're all here together, and
Mhm.
and there is sort of this larger continuum
Mhm.
and ability to be compassionate about the other species here. So,
Absolutely.
and I don't know
Absolutely.
where I came upon that. I don't know. I read a lot of Jacob Bernowski in college, and so maybe that was part
Uh-huh.
of it. And then I had friends that introduced me to Buddhism and things like that. And so, but I would consider myself a Buddhist, but I wouldn't say I'm a practicing type Buddhist or anything like
Uh-huh.
that. I
Uh-huh.
like those sort of very basic teachings, I think, of respecting all life. Because,
Yes.
you know, who's to say, you know, they
It's
get to yeah. Yeah.
and
So
what is more profound than life? I
yeah,
mean,
right.
that's kind of like everything.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm touched, Lisa, by the consciousness and the caring that I hear
Hmm.
as what you what is important to you,
Hmm.
that it's it's recognizing the balance and honor, not just recognizing it, but honoring the balance and the purpose that all beings have,
Hmm.
whether they have two legs or eight or, you know,
Or none.
none or none. That's
Well, and
right.
I don't always get it right. I mean,
Mm,
like I'm not a vegan, even though I
mhm,
sort of secretly aspire to be a vegan. But I think, I still drive a car. I still,
mhm,
I'm a consumer. A lot of my
mhm,
food comes in plastic, which I wish it didn't. But
mhm, yeah.
but I think that, we're still in process,
Mhm, mhm.
and you know we're still a work in process. So,
Yeah,
you know
yeah. Mm, mhm.
yeah.
So being in process, I'm wondering, do you have practices or ways of engagement that keep your sense of belonging and connection and reciprocity with the outdoors, that keep that sense nourished and alive? What do you do to keep those
So
flowing?
yeah, I think that's so key because you can sort of feel separate from nature so easily.
Mhm.
um but I think I get that kind of stuff in little ways. So one of the things that I think really helped as a foundation for that was I lived for many, many years. Well, not many, many. I had 8 years. I lived on Catalina
Mhm.
Island down south. And I think
Mm.
that
Mhm.
because of where I lived and because of what I did, and and the fact that I lived in, I mean, there were no roads where we lived. We had 4-wheel drive cars.
Mhm.
We were in the ocean all the time, every day, in, on, around. I mean, you're
Mhm.
so in touch with the natural world in the way that I lived. So you saw the stars, you saw the sunrise, you saw dolphins, you saw whales, you saw fish, you saw sharks, you saw, I mean, there's just so many things. And I think that was probably one of those big, I mean, that certainly was a big transformation for my life. And probably why I didn't leave for a long time, because it was such a great experience. And
Yeah.
so when you come back to the mainland, you come back to what other people would consider reality.
Mhm.
You have to try and sort of hold on to those nuggets of natural connection are harder, but also,
Mhm.
um, I think maybe because I had those other experiences, that it's in some ways easier for me to connect to it, because I've had
Yes.
these amazing experiences out in the wild, so to
Mhm.
speak. So
Mhm.
here locally, I mean, my husband and I, we go for walks a lot. And for me, it's during that time, sometimes we go really early in the morning when it's like
Mhm.
not even light out.
Light up.
And
Mhm.
I'm looking up at the stars, and I'm trying to always teach him constellations,
Oh.
but he's never going to get those. But but for me,
Mhm.
that's that connection of, we can see stars, we can see planets, we can see sort of the bigger, I'd say the bigger cosmos, but you get the sense of, and one of the
Mhm.
things I've always loved in my time in the ocean, anywhere, even on land too, is that I love feeling like I am a small being, because
Oh.
because we are. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we're pretty tiny. We think we're way more important, but we're not, right? So I love being in the ocean with stuff that's huge. Like,
Oh.
in college, I swam with basking sharks off of Santa Cruz. I
Mhm.
was swimming with manta rays, the oceanic sized
Mm.
manta rays. To feel, and just even
Yeah.
being in the ocean in general, you
Mhm.
have this sense that, yeah, I'm no big thing, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. So when you go for a walk in the morning, you sort of tap into that feeling of like, yeah, I'm just a little thing here, and I can
Mhm.
have big impact, but I'm still just a little thing here. And our world is really scaled so much to us, but when you get out in
Mhm.
nature,
Mhm.
no, not so
Mm-mm.
much. So we go for
Mm-mm.
walks. I have a dog. We take the dog out to the forest for walks. We take the dog to the beach for walks sometimes, not so much a whole lot of places. I go kayaking, we go boogie boarding, I go snorkeling when I can. I get in the
Mhm.
ocean. I'm not
Mhm.
so, even though I learned how to scuba dive here, I'm not so eager to get in the water because it's a little cold for me now.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but I have those natural experiences, and then I also have an amazing group of girlfriends, and we've gone on great trips through the years.
Mhm.
But sometimes we just all get together and go for hikes, and
Mhm.
sort of having that connection in so many different ways. Your friends, your dog, yourself, your husband, your whatever.
Mhm.
I think having things that are still connected in the natural world in that way sort of brings it in this multi-layer for me, which is really good. but
Mhm.
but for me, I definitely know, like, if I'm not, so we weren't able to get out to the forest for a while, and you feel it, like, you feel it, and when you finally get out,
Yes.
yeah, when you
Yeah.
finally get out there, you're like,
Ah.
I can breathe. All right, this is good. This is good. And I feel like that when
Yeah.
I'm in the ocean, when I'm in a
Yes.
place where I feel super comfortable, or even on a kayak, it's like, yeah, this is my, that's sort of my, um, solace, my reviver, my energizer,
Mhm.
just to even just sit on a kayak and just, like, all right, I just need
Mm.
to sit here and breathe for a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
awesome. It's awesome. And I think having
Absolutely.
those times is just so important. And
Mhm,
and having those quiet moments where you can sort of
mhm,
just listen to the birds and listen
mhm,
to listen to the wind through the needles or through the trees, or hear the waves, or
mhm.
you know I mean, the earth is just awesome. It's awesome.
Yes,
So
yeah, yes. Oh, thank you for that. Boy, that has me when we're done with this, I wanna get to the beach.
I know.
It's it's calling. I can hear
Yeah,
it. But it
yeah.
is there's that sense of coming home when we let
Mhm,
ourselves get still and
mhm.
quiet, and then it's almost like something deep inside remembers,
Oh
"Oh,
yeah. Oh yeah.
home. I'm home," and
Yeah.
it's a relaxation that doesn't happen, like, at a spa or something.
No.
This is a very deep and profound, sense of relationship. Yeah.
I feel like it's that that sort of relaxation, that sort of it's that sense of safety, it's that sense of the whole, like it's holding you. Nature is holding you and saying, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, this is good. This is good.
I
I
got
got
your
you.
back.
I got you."
Got
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautifully, beautifully stated. That is it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so taking off from that, from the I got you mentioned listening to the wind and the leaves
Mm,
and the sound of the waves. So when you listen to Earth, cosmos, what what do you learn from that
mm.
listening, from that communion?
I feel like I learn who's in the neighborhood, right? So
Mm.
I sort of learn about the neighborhood. I learn about the community. I hear the birds. Oh, that's a woodpecker.
Mhm,
That's a
mhm.
cormorant. That's a Oh, that see the sound of the wind through the pine needles is different than the sound of the wind through eucalyptus leaves.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's to me, there's that kind of a thing where you're sort of, yeah, I'm sort of thinking about, okay, well, who's here?
Mhm.
Where are you?
Mhm.
Where
Mhm.
we walk in the mornings, because like I mentioned, it's before there's light. Um, there's a couple owls that live in the trees near us. There's also
Mm.
some red-tailed hawks that live in the trees near us.
Mhm.
And for me, it's always amazing, in the mornings when it's still dark, we can hear the owls hooting to each other. And then at some
Mhm.
point they quiet down, and then the red tails and the red shoulder hawks that we have close by,
Mm.
they kind of come back, they wake up and start moving around. And
Mhm.
so for me, it's just like, yeah, we're all here in the neighborhood. So
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's like recognizing a person's voice.
Oh
It
yeah.
you're just hearing, "Who's up now? Who's awake?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, living on Catalina was very much like that. I would
Mhm.
go out in the early mornings for walks. I'd have to go out snorkeling to collect stuff for the marine science classes that we were teaching. And so, you very much have this very personal relationship with nature because you're
Mhm.
going to the same places, you're seeing a lot of the same stuff, you're probably
Mhm.
seeing a lot of the
Mhm.
same animals. And so
Mhm.
okay, yeah, there's an octopus that lives right in here, or there's a harbor
Mhm.
seal that's always over there, but whenever it sees me, it comes over, or it, whatever. So to me, I think, that's those personal, we're part of the
Mhm.
same neighborhood. Our
Yeah.
neighborhoods aren't the same. We don't all
Mhm.
live in houses, but we
Mhm.
all are part of, and certainly they're impacting my community as much as I'm impacting their community, although I'm probably impacting their community a little bit more. But
Mhm.
but it's
Mhm.
still, for me, I think, yeah, I just love feeling that we're sort of here together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And we
That
can make it better or we can make it harder.
that's right.
Um, so, you know,
Mhm.
why not make it better?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
many, many, many years ago. I mean, we're talking like when I was probably 18, which is a while ago. But
Mhm.
I was having a discussion with somebody who, I've always had really fuel efficient cars. And so I was having a discussion with somebody who was like, well, what if global
Mhm.
warming isn't true, Lisa? And I said, well, why wouldn't you have a fuel efficient car anyways? just in case, right?
Right.
Just in case. Same idea. Why don't we all plant natives just in case this is really going to be important, you know?
That's right. That's right. Yes. And we do get the feedback.
Yeah.
We can have a positive impact or we can have a negative impact. And we do get the feedback. And that feedback comes often in nature time, so it's not like feedback that we get from a heart monitor or something where it's in the moment, but it's there. And again, as you're describing, when you know the neighborhood, then you miss who's not there, who used to be there. Of I know I did a lot of tadpooling and frogging where I was growing up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they were just loud and all night, and they're just not there.
It's not like that anymore. Yeah.
There's no singing there, and so having that attunement and that awareness of being in the relationship, being part of an ecosystem, then we get our feedback quickly because we notice if things are thriving or if they're getting Rachel Carlson and the silent spring is coming in,
Yeah.
or the what was I can't remember the name of, it's a book about the moths that used to catch on windshields up in particular part of the country, and so it would be like snow, and then that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And those
it's,
moths, I mean, it's a hassle for people, but those moths actually really feed a lot of bats. And
that's
bats
right.
are really critically important for crop protection and all sorts of stuff. I think, as we kind of get farther in to whatever era we're in, we're really
Mhm.
realizing that there is a lot of past knowledge that's really important. So
Right.
you see there's owl boxes being put up in orchards
Yes.
and vineyards in order to
Yes.
have owls there, or to have
Mhm.
hawks, or to have
Mhm.
bats, because
Mhm.
we know that there's a relationship, and that
Yes.
the best thing is to promote that relationship because everybody can thrive.
That's
The
right.
worst thing is for us to control it, and
Mhm.
to try to make it just for us. That
Mhm.
never works. I mean, it's funny.
Mhm.
So I'm always, what if the animals, started fighting back? What if they said,
Mhm.
no, I'm not going to stay in
Mhm.
this pen. I'm going to just
Mhm.
go and eat your
Mhm.
lawn, which is kind of what the
Mhm.
deer do in PG. But there's the idea of, like, what gives us the
Mhm.
chutzpah to think that we can
Mhm.
control it all, and why should we?
Mhm.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think,
Exactly.
in that sense, that's where the ocean is a little bit different than the land,
Mhm.
because it's harder to control things. Although we have
Yes.
huge impacts in the ocean, both
Mhm.
positive and negative, but it's harder to control things in the ocean. And I think,
Mhm.
when we talk to kids, or when we talk to people that don't know that much about the ocean, they're very fearful
Mhm.
of what's there, especially sharks. And God,
Mhm.
it would be awesome to see a great white shark. I've never seen one.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've been in
Yeah.
places where I've been,
Mhm.
obviously, but I've never seen one. But it would just be
Mhm.
awesome, to
Yeah.
see that power, that doesn't
Yes.
exist on
Yes.
the land in the same way. So
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
again,
Hmm.
feeling small, like having that frame of
Uh-huh.
reference suddenly shrink down to, like, yeah, you are tiny. And I love that.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We to wake us up to that, to help
Yeah.
us remember, oh, wait, no, no.
You're not that important. You think you're important, but you really aren't.
You're
So
really
get
kind
over
of
yourself.
expendable. Right. Exactly. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that you're reading Braiding
Yeah.
Breath, and I think it's in that book that, Robin Wall Kimmerer, at some point, I'll paraphrase this because I can't remember, but there's something along the lines of, "What if the earth could maybe one day the earth will be thankful for us?" That would be the turnaround. Um,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the Paris Climate Accord and all the stuff going on right now, and
mhm,
I I would hope that that would be one day that that could be the case.
Mhm.
But you think about,
Mhm.
in the sort of communities that we have now. I
Mhm.
mean, this has been one, okay, say 200 years,
Mhm.
but for thousands of years, indigenous cultures have lived in various locations,
Yeah.
thousands. And here we're
Yes.
having this huge impact within
Right.
within 200 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's hard to
Mhm.
imagine that. I mean, maybe the earth will be thankful when there's fewer of us. I don't know.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard to think about, but
Mhm.
and yeah, it's hard to think about, but then at the same time, you know, it's an organism in and of itself, our
That's
world.
right.
And so
Mhm.
you can't, it's like a cancer. You can't have growth of one thing over another that crowds
Mhm.
out. So
That's right. It messes up the balance.
it does. It
That's
does.
key. Balance is
Yeah.
the key. So, what questions regarding the outdoors are you holding at this moment in time?
Mm, that's a good question. No, I still am interested in knowing what's there or what's there, or,
Mhm.
I'm still
Mhm.
interested in knowing those sorts of things. I think for
Mhm.
me, it's more of a question of how to share with people
Yeah.
and how to not even just share the space with people, but to share the awe and the wonder with people. So there's
Yeah.
sort of a two-sided there, how are we going
Mhm.
to, what's our place in it and how are we going to preserve it? But then in that sense, what is nature going to bring to us to say, oh yeah, no, I've been holding on to this really cool thing here, and I've been waiting for you guys to kind of get a clue. But
Mhm.
so there,
Mhm.
maybe there's something like that for us. I don't know. I mean, I love
Mhm.
how, when you hear about restoration projects
Mhm.
and places that have been, you know farmed or
Mhm.
um, burned or
Mhm.
whatever, and then boof, it all nature sort of comes back because the seed bank is in the
Yes.
soil. And
Right.
I love those sort of I love to see, those signs of regeneration.
Mm.
And in so many
Absolutely.
ways, again, where I lived on Catalina, there were goats that had been on the island, goats and pigs and bison and all sorts of introduced animals that had been on the island for so long. And even though they had been on the island for hundreds of years, well, some of them hundreds of years, the goats especially, and they're very, very voracious. You take the goats out of a certain area or take them off, get them removed from the island entirely, and suddenly there's native plants that people have only seen drawings
Mm.
of, right? Nobody's ever actually
Mm.
seen these plants. And you realize,
Wow.
like, nature is so resilient.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's cool. So I guess maybe in that way, that's sort of what I'm looking forward to see, the resilience of nature. I mean, we have so many
Mm.
things going on right now. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a huge kelp die off in California.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
massive, massive kelp die off.
Mhm.
Not die
Mhm.
off, but it's actually been the urchins have just mowed it down. And so, are we in sort of another cycle of, okay, we're going to have urchin barrens with no kelp for a while, and then is there going to be something that's then going to come and help take the urchins out? Or, so where is all that
Mhm.
swinging? So for me, I mean, I love surprises. I love surprises. And so for me, it's a little bit of like, okay, what's going to happen next? Like, what's going to happen
Right.
next? I mean, it's hard because
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
so many species that we rely on commercially, especially for
Mhm.
kelp forest. And certainly, you know, there's really iconic species like the sea otters that rely on
Right.
on kelp to some extent, but they don't have to be in kelp forests. I mean, there are plenty of other places, but um, yeah, it's like that for me is I love those stories of resilience and
Mhm.
resurgence and recovery and that kind of stuff
Mhm.
that shows that,
Mhm.
yeah, this place is tougher than maybe
Mhm.
we give it credit for.
Right.
or or maybe there are systems that can help to 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 help it recover.
Mhm.
So, but yeah. I mean, you think about
Yeah.
like Chernobyl, where
Mhm.
Chernobyl, I
Mhm.
mean, there's animals there that are living in the Chernobyl you know, zone, and they're thriving. Yes, they probably have incredibly high levels of radiation, but yet there is this very unique thriving community there, which
Yes.
is that's pretty cool. That's
Yes.
pretty cool.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So,
Well, and that speaks to the adaptability and the evolution, that one thing leads to another, and
mhm,
it's changing. It's changing all the time, and so, mm, mm, I'm appreciating how you hold that balance of protection and stewardship, and also the wonder of,
mhm.
well, and then what?
Yeah. And then what? Now let's see what
What comes
happens. Yeah.
next?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Well, I think, one of the cool things about being in nature is that you can still have that childlike idea
Yeah.
of, "Oh, what's this?" "I've never seen this,"
Yes,
and
yeah.
that's kind of neat. There's not a whole lot of
Mhm,
things in our world, at least, I mean, certainly in maybe there are, but I'm so focused on the science and sort of the sort of realm that I've found. But you know
mhm,
it's neat to have that that ability to tap into that wonder and just be excited about,
mhm,
what is that?
mhm,
Oh, that's cool.
mm,
Or see that excitement in somebody else's eyes of like, oh my
mm.
god, that is so cool. So,
Yes.
last week at some point, Dave Dave woke up really early and walked out and let our dog outside so she could use her potty. And
Mhm,
Dave comes back and it's like 4:45. It's early.
mhm.
And it's like way earlier than I want to get up, even though I'm
Uh-huh.
happy to get up at like 5:30, 5:45, but
Mhm.
4:45, no way.
Mm.
Dave comes in to the bedroom. He's like, there's something outside in the sky that I think you should see. And I was like, ugh. And there's a part of me that's like, no. And then there's the other part of me that's like, well, wait a minute, there's something out there. And when I lived on Catalina, we saw like rocket launches and stuff like that from Vandenberg, and I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, it's again that sort of like, oh, this is cool, but
Mhm,
this is like really not cool. Anyways,
mhm.
uh, so I get up, and there across the sky are 20 or 30 dots of light, all same size, all kind of going the same
Mhm.
direction. I had never seen it before. Um, it was kind of crazy. And so we
Wow.
got online and figured out that it was the Elon Musk Starlink to bring internet to other
Right,
places on
right,
the globe.
right.
But it was one of those things where we're like, oh my God, what is that? And I was like I'm going through all these things like, okay, well, is this the end? Is this how it ends? I don't think so. Okay. So probably not that. Is it a
Mhm.
satellite that got broken up? Well, it's awful evenly spaced. So I don't think that would
Mhm.
be it. Could it
Uh-huh.
be an alien? I don't know.
Mhm.
And then we figured it out. But it was one of those it's
Wow.
for me to tap
Mhm.
into that idea of wonder and like just delight. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Which is
Uh,
probably why I love surprises. So,
mhm. Absolutely. And you've loved it all your life. I
yeah.
mean, that's
Yeah.
been that's a key Lisa quality, is access to wonder. And how cool is that?
Yeah.
How cool
Yeah.
is that? That's being awake, being
Yeah.
alive.
I
Yeah.
hope so. I hope so. And it's funny because I think that for people that aren't in that same sort of
Mm.
frame of mind, um, they kind of think, "Who the heck are you?" But I don't care. I mean,
Mm-mm.
the good thing is I have surrounded myself with people that are like-minded, and
Mhm.
so we all can be excited about things
Yeah.
in our own little ways. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ah. Did you have something else you
I was
wanted?
going to say, so a bunch of years ago, Dave and I went to Hawaii,
Mhm.
and we got on a charter out to Molokini Crater, so out
Mhm.
on the island of
Mhm.
Hawaii. We jump in the water. It happened to be in like January, I guess. We
Mhm.
jump in the water. Of course, it's gorgeous weather, and you can see like all the way down to the bottom. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And we jump in the water, and I dive under the surface, and I can hear the whales singing because it's the whales are. I know. So I quickly grab Dave. Dave, 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 gotta go down. And oh, it's just awesome. And you just wonder, like, is anybody else hearing this?
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
anybody, everybody's focused on the fish that they can see, but are they putting their heads in the water to hear the bigger thing that's happening? So
Wow.
that was cool. It was really cool.
Oh, I love that phrase, or and I mean, and we can apply that to ourselves and to anything. I mean, am I putting my head in the water to hear the bigger thing
Hmm.
that's happening?
Hmm. Yeah.
Because there always is the bigger thing.
There's always the bigger story. There's
Yeah.
always the bigger meaning. There's always the bigger connection. So,
Yes.
you and I have talked a lot about, challenges that I've had over the years over
Mhm.
work stuff and da 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 da. Da.
Mhm.
What is that bigger story? Is there a different meaning to this other than that
Mhm.
conflict that I have right now with this person?
Mhm.
Okay, if I let go of that conflict, and for lack of a better term, sort of my ego in that conflict,
Right.
and try
Right.
to see the bigger picture.
Mhm.
Okay, what does that mean? What does that
Yeah.
say? you know
Yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that,
And
in a way, maybe that relationship with nature helps in sort of developing that sort of bigger context. And again, I'm not
Mhm.
perfect. I have my moments where I do stupid passive aggressive things like anybody
Mhm.
else. I kick myself about it later,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I still do them, and I still
Mhm.
have times when I'm not my best self. But
Mhm.
I think that when I can forgive myself, that oftentimes happens in nature. I don't do that here in
Mhm.
my house necessarily. I
Mhm.
I sort of get back in touch with the bigger picture of what's happening here,
Mhm.
and try and forgive myself for being nitpicky or passive aggressive or whatever.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
also, try to, I mean, this gets into bigger stuff, but I've always felt like our purpose here as humans
Mm.
is to be connected to a manifestation of love. And so,
Mhm.
how do
Mhm.
we love ourselves? How do we love our partners? How do
Mhm.
we love our children? How do we
Yes.
love the bigger context? So,
Yes. Indeed. Indeed. Wow. Well, you're tuned in because I think you just answered my final question, but I'll just see if there's anything more you want to say. Um, from
mm,
what you know and from what you wonder, and wonder's a really big part of you. So, from what you know and what you wonder, what are the seeds that you want to plant for the future?
well, that's a big question. I think I want to plant that same I want to plant that same sort of seed of wonder and amazement, and this isn't the end all, but I can be part
Mhm.
of a positive story.
Mhm.
I think I can be part of the positive outcomes of it.
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, in everything that I do, well, not everything, but a lot of things that I do for my work, I am trying to cultivate those ideas of those sparks of
Mhm.
inspiration, or those sparks of curiosity, or
Yeah.
to try, we all have challenges that we're trying to overcome, either
Mhm.
in our heads or in our environments. But there's always there's always an opportunity for a spark of interest and inspiration, and that kind of stuff. And I think, um like giving people permission to do that, right? Like
Mhm,
I've like
mhm.
obviously I've given myself permission to do that for, I mean,
Yes.
Glenn Moffat gave me permission to do that from the very beginning. But that idea of like, you know, I think people get so focused in and on their definition of themselves.
Mhm,
And I think part of my sort of thing is let go of your definition and just go with what you're curious about. And don't
mm,
worry about how you define yourself. If you define
mhm,
yourself as a parent
mhm,
or a businessman or whatever, who
mhm.
cares? Nobody cares.
Yes,
Oh, the curiosity
that's right.
that you have and the caring that you bring to that curiosity is really the important part. So
Mm. Wow,
is that
Lisa,
is that good?
wow.
I-
So beautiful and so beautifully stated.
good.
So if someone has been sparked
Yeah.
and what you've had to what you've shared and the energy that you invite,
Mhm.
how could people get in touch with you?
Well, so people can always email me.
Mm,
Always welcome email. So I so they can always email me.
mhm,
Um, they can get involved in the various volunteer projects that I oversee.
mhm,
But they can also just go out to a natural area close to them and get involved in what's close to them. I mean, there's so
mhm,
many organizations out there
mhm.
doing so much great work.
Yes,
um, it's not just about a
yes,
connection to me, it's about a connection to that wider world. So I think, you can live in Arkansas and find people that are doing amazing stuff. So
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So if and I'll put this information in the, learn more box on the YouTube
Good.
page, but also just so we have it on the recording.
Mhm.
So mailing you or if there's a website where
Yeah. So emailing is obviously the best, but
okay.
I do. There are ways to sort of see some of the resources that we have. So um, there's a website which is Baynet, which is BAYNET. Team Ocean, TEAMOCEAN. So those are two of the programs that
Mhm,
I manage. Um, .weebly.com,
mhm,
and those you can get to a website that I manage that has a lot of content in there about, there's the guest lectures and things like that.
mhm,
And then there's information about two of the programs, two of the many programs that I manage. But
mhm.
you can contact me through that as well. So,
Great.
but yeah, but
And
it's
your
a
email?
and my email is Lisa, so it's Lisa .Emanuelson, which is EMANUELSON at
Mhm.
California. So it's CALIFORNIA
Uh-huh.
MSF, which stands for Marine Sanctuary Foundation, but it's MSF.org. So,
Right.
and that's
Wow,
the best way
that's
for people to
quite an
contact.
email address.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know. When I was a kid, it's like they never had enough boxes on like those like form tests. You're like,
Right.
I ran out of boxes here. I need some more boxes on the end. Yeah.
Indeed.
It's very funny. But yeah. Yeah. And
Oh,
and if you just even Google Baynet or Team Ocean, then you can find me. So
great, great,
so yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. I
Lisa,
so
thank you.
appreciate you having me come and talk. This has just been
Oh,
so delightful, and I mean, obviously I feel very honored because
mm,
I
mm,
sort of in my lane and talking to people that I talk to, and you and I talk about a bunch of other stuff,
mhm,
but
mhm,
yeah, this is just super interesting, I'm just super. I can't
mm.
wait to see who else you got to speak as well. So
Oh, wonderful. Well, it has been a delight and an inspiration
good.
to share this time and this conversation with you and I mean just hearing you tell of your transformation and transformations is transforming because I think you hit curiosity and wonder. That's the key. That's how you get into
Mhm.
that that realm of transformation
Yeah.
and so thank you so very much so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Mm. So I'm going to do a little closing here if you'll just
Okay.
sit with me
Okay.
by the fire a bit. So Some More Stories is an offering of Monterey Bay Meditation Studio in service of cultivating a relationship of reverence and reciprocity with the outdoors. This relationship arises as we realize our profound connection with the planet that we live on and the universe of which we are part. For more information about this series or courses and the community of Monterey Bay Meditation Studio, please go to montereybaymeditation.com or check out our YouTube channel for additional recordings in this series. So for each of our storytellers, I find a quote that just has me feel, oh, this resonates. And so this is Lisa Emanuelson's quote. This is from Lauren Isley. If there is magic on this planet, it is contained in water.
Mm,
Yeah. Mm.
very much so.
Mhm. From the campfire under the night sky, this is Marianne Rowe wishing you warmth, some more sweetness, and awe. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Mm.